David Charpentier. I was born in Fridley, Minnesota, a suburb of Minneapolis, and I live in Deerfield Township, Ohio. I grew up in Minnesota in a suburb of St. Paul called Eagan, Minnesota. I'm the oldest of 5 children, and all of us are adopted. I went to school at a private liberal arts college called Bethel University. I also attended ROTC through the University of Minnesota, and when I graduated with a history degree, I was also commissioned as second lieutenant in the United States Army as a nuclear, biological, and chemical officer. And I spent almost 6 years on active duty. I was stationed in, did schools in Alabama, Georgia, Colorado, Texas, and upon leaving the service, I moved to the Cincinnati area, where I've been for 14 years. And I've worked in various positions, and currently I'm a stay-at-home dad. I am married to a fabulous wife, and we have 4 kids together. It's an interesting question for me, because I grew up in a home that was religious, and it was Catholic religious. But I believe in that I experienced and knew that there was something larger than me. So I think there's always been this innate sense inside me that I'm part of something larger, that God or higher power or the universe is present. But it was very clouded for me, and I don't think I really appreciated that and didn't gain clarity probably until I was 30, when I really had and began to have my own spiritual experience, my own spiritual awakening. And prior to that, it was religious for me. And I saw other people having this spiritual experience, but I never had that spiritual experience. So probably not until I was 30. And probably from the time I was about 25 or 26 until I was 30, I really had no interest in it. I was like, screw all this. I don't want to be connected. At 29, I was really struggling with life. I was addicted to experiences and out of control, going 150 miles an hour in a Yugo. And I hit the wall. I crashed. And it was out of that place of despair, out of that place of pain and anguish and just deep despair that I finally said enough, and I gave up. And I, not in the sense that I was quitting, but that I surrendered. And I entered 12-step rooms. And in the 12-step rooms is where I first experienced, really, with, in the depth of my being, God, and experienced unconditional love. I remember I was sharing in a room, and if anybody's familiar with 12 steps, the 4th step talks about taking a fearless and moral inventory of yourself. And, essentially you write a list of the really shitty things you've done. I mean, for the most part. And I was in the midst of going through that process, and I was at a meeting and was just kind of struggling. Like thinking, if you looked in my rearview mirror, it was the path of destruction, of relationships, of finances, of just, a waste of talent and ability and gifts that that I had been given. And I remember sharing those feelings of, shame and not feeling great about myself. And a guy grabbed me after the meeting and he said, "If you could see what I see." And for the first time, it dawned on me that I was okay, that I was lovable, I was worthy of love, and it was okay to love myself. And I remember listening to other people share their stories and look at them and say, "So what? I don't care. You're great. You're a great person. I love who you are." But I was never able to internalize that for myself. But that night, I can remember profoundly going home and experiencing a change in my heart, an ability to accept myself, love myself, and be okay inside my own skin and not hate myself. And around that same time, somebody else suggested something to me. And it goes back to, I think, some of the challenges I had with religion. And in my time spent in Catholicism, and my parents had a Damascus Road type experience where they were born again and saved, and it was, from Catholicism to born again evangelical swing, and but both felt very similar for me. You can do this, you can't do that. These things are okay, these things aren't okay. And I always felt like I was constantly trying to measure up what people told me was expected from me, that God wanted from me. And I remember this person says, "Do you think God loves you any more or any less based on how you behave? Or what you've done? If you believe that God loves you unconditionally, then there really are no conditions to it. So your past is your past. The choices you made are the choices you made. But God doesn't love you any more now that you're making better, quote unquote, decisions than he did before. Or she did before, or whatever, because I don't know what gender God is. But all I know is that coupled with somebody saying to me, "If you could see what I see," began that process for me, that journey for me of really a transformative space of not being able to be in my own skin, hating being in my own skin, to being comfortable in my own skin and accepting love and receiving love and being able to love others. Yeah, there's many. I'm a father of 4 kids, and we talk about God, and I don't know what I really don't. My own personal concept, I think of God as loving, engaged. When I look at my children and I see the just pure beauty of them and who they are, and the lack of cloudiness that comes from that I have experienced in my life. I don't want to project that onto their lives. That, for me, that is my concept of God. This beautiful, pure, unconditional, loving presence in our lives. I marvel at my children and just the beauty. And I think more than anything, that's my concept of God. We joke at the dinner table. My kids will say God is a he, and I'll call God she. It sparks great conversation. And that's what I want. I want my kids to internalize and experience that, not have it be some Our Father or, this is the way it is. I want them to experience it versus it being taught to them. That was a process as well. But it happened in those 12-step rooms. It happened saying that I trust that going through this process, working these steps, will bring me to have a spiritual experience. The 12th step says, having had a spiritual awakening as a result of these steps. And it was clear to me, it became completely crystal clear to me, that the only way was to have a spiritual experience. That the religious experience, the carnal experience, all of those experiences I have tried didn't work. And so I needed to have a spiritual experience. And so trusting God, relying on God, that process would bring me along a path to have a spiritual experience. That's when I really trusted. It's the first time I said, I'm not in control. I don't control this process. I'm going to be engaged in this process. And I let go and worked it. And it took several years to go through that, to work those steps all the way through. But doing that, in that process, was the time that I really relied on God. Oh, that's a great question. I don't know if that there's a thing I can think of that I go, this was the first time. But I remember dealing with people who, family members who I had, decades of baggage with and challenges with, and being able to be with them in a new place, in a new space, in a loving space, in an accepting space. That for me was seeing the results of having this spiritual awakening. That when I was in those old situations, I didn't choose the old way. That I chose a path of loving and accepting. So I don't remember a specific instance, but I remember that happening and really being baffled and telling people about it, and people looking at me like, sure. But it was, for me, those were significant experiences. I doubt my faith every day. I do. What I experience when I doubt, for me, is okay. If I doubt my faith, I'm okay with that. It's if I put my faith aside, is when I realize, or if it happens for a significant period of time, that I see really significant poor results. I lose control. Not that I have control, but those old patterns come back in. That peace of mind. That in the New Testament, it talks about the peace that passes all understanding. That is when I am in my faith, and when I'm walking in that place of spiritual understanding, I have peace that passes understanding. There's an author I know that says, all is well, everything's a mess, but all is well. And that for me is the peace that passes understanding. And when I'm in a spiritual, whole, connected place with God, that's where I'm at. When I'm not, and it's not about doubting, because I'm okay with doubting my faith, but it's not living and walking in that faith, because I need to continue to question and probe. And like I said, my concept of God is so small, I believe. I can't put it into words. It's an experience. And I continue to want to have that experience and grow in that experience. If I stop trying to have that experience, if I stop looking for that or experiencing that, that's when I have trouble. That's when I crash. And I've always known I was adopted for as long as I can remember. And growing up, the question I had was, well, how tall am I going to be? You can't tell. I'm sitting down. I'm 5'7". I'm below average height, and I wanted to know. I was always the shortest kid in my class, and how tall am I going to be? And that was my question, growing up, being adopted. But as I got older, that question changed, and not that the question changed, but the realization of the impact of being adopted, I think, changed, especially as being a parent. My oldest is almost 11, and going through that beautiful process of pregnancy and childbirth and seeing that miracle, and all 5 of the kids in my family were adopted, so I had no experience with that. I saw my aunts and uncles being pregnant, maybe some neighbors, but it was not a personal experience for me. But going through that process and trying to fathom what happened to me as I was delivered, and the voice, my birth mom's voice, the voice I had heard for 9 months, I didn't hear anymore. I learned from my birth mom, I learned from Gail that she never saw me when I was born. And it's difficult for me to imagine what an incredible thing she did to make that choice and hope for a better life for me. But I contrast that to the experience of watching my children be born and immediately being placed on the chest of their mother. And that familiar heartbeat, that familiar sound. My kids, when they were in utero, I would talk to them, and I can remember getting on my knees, and when I would first talk, and they would kick the belly. I could put my hand on the spot, and boom, they'd kick the belly. I don't think I realized the profound impact that had on my spirit until, well into my 30s as a parent, and reflecting on that. And I lived my life with this fear that if you knew me, you wouldn't love me and you would reject me. And it's not valid. It's not a valid fear. Today I can intellectually understand why I had that fear. I was born, I spent 6 weeks in a foster home. They called me Chris. I was born on Christmas Eve, so they called me Chris. And I went home to my parents, to my family. And at a little over 6 weeks old. So within this first 7 weeks of my life, the familiar sights and sounds that I had for 9 months were gone. I went to another house for 7 weeks that was, by all accounts, incredibly loving. I have a beautiful letter that the foster mom wrote to my parents, to another wonderful, beautiful, loving home. But I have witnessed and I see the importance of the stability and the just the comfort you want for your baby, for this beautiful child that is born. And I didn't have that. And it's not an excuse. It's not, oh, hey, I'm all screwed up because I I wasn't that. I mean, I still made those choices. I chose to act on that fear that I was not not lovable. I chose to act as if I knew you were going to abandon me. But that, I believe that's kind of fundamentally where that came from. You asked me when we were getting ready what my shirt says, and I'm not sure if it's in frame, but it's Greek. And it says, "Freedom is not free." The shirt on the back tells a very short story about a young man who died from wounds in combat in Afghanistan. And it's freedom. It's a freedom we have here that is somewhat unique in different parts of the world. But it has another meaning for me. This freedom is not free. The freedom that I experience spiritually has not been free. It's come with pain and challenges, but I appreciate it so much more. The freedom of loving myself, the freedom of being okay in my own skin, is a feeling beyond description, and one for 29 years I never thought I would experience. And I'm incredibly grateful. I'm incredibly grateful for that. I don't want to sound haughty, but the things that I did in the service were perfect for me. I got to wear a uniform. I had cool badges that I earned going to different schools, and, cool awards, and, things that if you were to see me, and certainly folks in the military, if they saw me in uniform, would say, that dude knows what's going on. He's been there, he's done that. And there was instant respect because of what I wore on the outside of me. But it was a shell. It was symbolic of most of my adult life until that time when I hit the wall, that if you saw me from the outside, you saw someone that looked like he had it all together. I looked like I had it all together. So it played a role, I think, in that it was a stark contrast for me to look back at and say, yeah, on the outside it really did look like you have it together. But on the inside I was a mess. I was a mess spiritually. I was a mess emotionally. And so it was more of a contrast, not something that led me to a place, but just a kind of an image reminder of how lost I was. Freedom. I really am. There are so many things I'm grateful for. I'm grateful for the people that have been in the path. I'm grateful for the experiences I've had in my life. But really, I'm grateful for this place, this moment that I continue to have, where I feel like I am, not that I feel like, where I'm free. I am free to be me. I'm free to experience the moment and not always be concerned about somebody leaving my life, whether these were conscious thoughts or not. How do I stack up? Am I good enough? Am I smart enough? Do I have enough? Am I enough? That was an all-pervasive thought. And freedom from that is the thing I'm most grateful for, because in that place, I am so grateful for the relationship I have with my wife. It's a beautiful, intimate, loving relationship. But I couldn't have that relationship without the freedom of being me and being able to be in the moment. So that is the thing I'm most grateful for, because out of that place, all else, all of the rest of my life bubbles out of. That might choke. My greatest wish is my kids experience it without all the pain. My greatest wish is that they experience freedom, spiritual and emotional freedom, without having to go through all the pain. I think I would have, I think my message would be that there is a place of freedom for you, regardless of your circumstance, regardless of what's happening on the outside and around you. I believe that there is a freedom for you that's available. I don't prescribe an approach or a place, or I know what worked for me. I believe that there's a way for everyone to experience that spiritual freedom, that peace that passes all understanding. And my message to them would be, find it. Do whatever it takes to find it, because there is nothing. And I've experienced a lot of things in my life, and there's nothing that compares. I think if you described it as my spiritual brother. A teacher on my journey, for sure. Wow. I would say, Gail, I love you, and I am incredibly grateful for you that we are linked together and a part of each other's lives. I'm continually amazed in my life you were able to make the choice that you did. And I'm grateful that we are together and in each other's lives. It was incredibly humbling for me. I would say to my mom and dad that I love you, and I'm incredibly grateful for all of the things you've provided for me, physically and emotionally and spiritually. I'm incredibly grateful for the adult, loving relationship we have, and the opportunity to be together and grow together as people and as family members. And, both of you live a life that you can be proud of. It's beyond reproach. Well, I think she hears this message frequently from me. The thing that I would say to Susan, that the message I would say to her is, Susan, I experience unconditional love with Susan, and I'm so grateful for that. I'm so grateful for you for doing that when I'm in my most vulnerable place. You hold my heart and hold me in a very sacred space. And it is a beautiful thing. And I'm incredibly grateful for that. I don't say that enough to you. I would say to my kids, all four of them, that having children is the most fabulous thing in the world. I did not know I was capable of loving this much. It's not like there's a certain amount of love that I'm capable of and each of you get an equal amount. It's that I love you each so much. And every time there was a new one, love exploded in my life so that I could love each of you that much more. And I will always love you. And it will be unconditional love. And you are all the apple of my eye. You know, I'm an Army Ranger, and we say we're going to link up in the patrol base in the sky. You know, I don't believe in heaven per se, that I was taught growing up. I don't believe in hell like I was taught growing up. I actually believe those are things I experience here on earth, based on my spiritual condition. But I believe that my spirit, my soul will carry on. I don't know if it'll come back or not, but I believe that I'll be in communion with those that have communion here on earth, and it will be an opportunity for me to continue to connect with them and be with them. One of the things that was really impactful for me is I had a very dogmatic experience growing up. This is how it is. This is how it will be. God is this. God is that. God is not this. God is not that. And I held on to those. Even though they didn't ring true for me, I held on to them. And, you know, along with, you know, you asked me what my message was, and I said that it's out there for you. And I guess one of the things I find myself continually doing is challenging my beliefs, questioning. And I don't have many things that I hold on to as absolutes anymore. There's not dogma for me that works. I can remember a period of time, you know, because of my evangelical experience, and that was probably the more challenging experience for me, I could not step foot in an evangelical place of worship because I just wanted to run the hell out of there. Couldn't stand being in that space. Yet I found comfort attending a mass, especially the higher, more Latin, you know, the less I understood mass, the more incense, the older the wood, those, I could sit in there and have, and it had nothing to do with the Catholic experience. It just was a place I could go and sit. But even today, to attend mass is difficult for me because the dogma doesn't work for me. And I'm grateful because that I was really almost kicked in the ass to do that. I wanted to cling to those beliefs, those things I held on to. And in my spiritual process, somebody kept asking me questions until I finally figured out that I needed to ask those questions of myself. And I still ask those questions. I'm maybe a quarter inch further on the answers than I was 14 years ago. And I'm okay with that. because I'm going to keep asking and keep trying to explore.
Which question?
What's your concept of God? The questions really, I guess, from my perspective, the questions that don't matter, you know. Is it okay to dance? Is it okay to drink? Is it okay to gamble? Who cares? And then I'm not trying to talk bad about anybody's religion, because I understand there are people that dogma brings comfort for them. It doesn't for me. And I want to focus on loving and being free. Does that make sense? Yeah.
So, in your own personal space where you are right now, who is Jesus? Or what is Jesus to you? Since you grew up Catholic,
Yeah.
again.
Why? I don't want to say this because I have fear my mother will see it. But certainly a great teacher. I mean, the message of do unto others as you would want them to do unto you is one of the most brilliant teachings this world has ever known. If we all treated each other that way, now I sound like a utopian, freak, but my neighborhood would be a better place if all of my neighbors treated each other the way they wanted to be treated. My house would be a better house if all of us as a family always treated each other the way we want to be treated. So I see the Christ as an incredible teacher who brought incredible messages to us. But I don't subscribe to Christ as the Savior in the sense that he died and was resurrected. But I find freedom, I find salvation in the message of the Christ. I find salvation in this love, this place of love. Yeah.